call this assembly work session order. Go around the room, identify ourselves for the love of the machine right here.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
I'll be Gray Jackson.
Dick Training.
Bill Evans.
The purpose of the work session is to meet some of our new directors before we approve them. So Chris,
Yes, sir.
come up and join us. I understand you have an appointment after this.
I do. Thank you for being flexible.
So Chris, you're going to be Economic Community Development Executive Director?
Without the executive,
Okay,
yeah.
good. So tell us about yourself.
Sure. I grew up in many places. My family was an oil family, so we moved around a lot. Had a chance to experience a lot of communities. We moved to Alaska in 1989, which was my freshman year of high school. And I've been here basically ever since, with some short stints outside for school. I'm coming to this appointment after serving as the Executive Director for Anchorage Downtown Partnership for about 8 years. 2 years before that, I served as the Policy Communications Director there. So basically, I've been in the partnership for about a decade,
Okay.
which is a long time.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell us what municipal departments will report to you as Director of Economic and Community Development?
Sure. Currently, the chain of command will be Parks and Recreation, HLB and Real Estate Services, Anchorage Community Development Authority, Visit Anchorage, and then the Community Development Department, which includes planning, permitting, etc.
Could you? I didn't hear the last
The
part.
Community Development Department, which includes planning, permitting, etc.
Okay. And when you say Visit Anchorage and ACDA, because ACDA, as you know, is
Yeah. Yeah, they're not true municipal
right,
departments.
right.
But they
Okay,
all play a role in community development.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
We've been joined by Mr. Honeman. Welcome, Mr. Honeman.
Thank
How
you.
was fishing?
Good.
Good.
Limited now.
Grandkids have fun?
Absolutely.
Good. Mr. Evans, anything?
No, sir.
Mr. Honeman, anything?
I had a chance to speak with Mr. Schutte for a few moments here last week when there was some transition. So when do you expect to be
I'm going
fine
to
with you?
July 31st.
and just
July
use
31st.
that for each one. Yeah.
And, I've had the privilege of knowing you for a number of years, so I informed. What's if I'd ask what is your key concerns for this division, this department of the municipality? What are some goals you'd like to see accomplished? Maybe short term and maybe some down the road.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's basically all of the things that make this community great. We'll get to have a hand in that. So that includes culture, tourism, and then of course the built community that we live in, and that's planning and permitting. So I think that right out of the gate, the biggest challenges that we face are related to the planning and permitting processes. We hear that. I've heard that both from the developer side of the counter as well as from the municipal employees side of the counter. So I think that there are some system improvements that can help make the process smoother, more transparent, more reliable, and ultimately result in additional and better products.
Could you please keep us apprised if there's additional resources or staff that might be needed to accomplish them? Particularly, I think you and I had a brief conversation about community development, permitting, and such. Some of the frustrations that are felt as you
Absolutely.
Because I know that there's been some issues on staffing in the past.
Mr. Chairman, I was remiss. I forgot to mention that I also get the pleasure of overseeing the library and the
Good.
Don't tell them that I forgot that.
Mr. Peterson, anything from you, sir? Questions?
I think not right now, thanks.
We've been joined by Mr. Bosky. Ma'am, any questions?
Yes, I apologize for being late. I had to deal with an oxygen issue. But Chris, can you just recap?
Oxygen issue?
Yeah, my mother-in-law's oxygen
Oh, I
stopped
thought
working.
maybe it was yours. I was worried about it.
So, yeah, that was a little bit of a panic. Chris, can you recap for me what departments it is that you'll be overseeing?
Yes.
I know you just did it.
No, that's fine.
I am so sorry.
Now I got a crib sheet thanks to Mike.
Yeah, good.
So it's the library, it's
Uh-huh.
the museum, it's Parks and Rec, it is HLB Real Estate Services. While they're not true divisions of the municipality, ACDA and Visit Anchorage,
Yeah.
and then the Community Development Department.
Okay, and
Planning and permitting.
Oh, yeah, planning and permitting.
Which falls under, yeah. community
That's going to be a big
development
one. Okay, so with respect to the museum, how much do you know about the current museum's contract?
Only what the current contract is the one that I recall from 2006, 2007, of which I've got a copy and I've read through, so I'm familiar with it in that regard.
Sure, that's going to be something that we'll contact you next week. I'm anticipating the ombudsman's looking into them right now.
Okay.
It's my understanding, though they receive millions of dollars every year from the municipality, the public is not welcome in their board meetings. That's a problem, in my opinion. And also, the fact is, they're going forward with a very large expansion project, and the municipality of Anchorage, though it's a municipal facility, we have no say whether they do it or they don't do it. So I think, from a public process perspective, I think we share the same value in that public process is important, and so is transparency, and that is something that, in my view, requires improvement, especially at the museum. I had emailed the museum director earlier in the week to ask when their next board meeting was, because I want to attend, and I have not yet gotten a response. So, if they're taking public money, I think that's important.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And also from a community development perspective, the Assembly obviously has dealt a lot with Title 21 and a lot of issues within community development and planning and permitting. And it's the desire of the Title 21 committee to kind of morph into something a little bit more robust, but I would like the mayor's office perspective to be represented. So we're going to be reviewing Title 21, and my hope was specifically that you would be part of that process, be on that committee.
Yeah.
Because I think together we could do great things. So those are just two of the big issues that I want to put on your radar early.
Great.
I recognize that this is definitely a new role for you. This is going to be a big learning experience. Though maybe you don't have as much experience as Mr. Abbott, maybe stepping into a role like this, it's all who you surround yourself with. And I look forward to learning with you, helping you in some areas, and I'm sure we can learn together in other areas. This is a big leap in taking this position from your past experience as I read your resume. But I have every bit of confidence you're willing and able.
Thank you.
Chris, just a couple of questions. The last administration, when they came in, told us they were going to do all sorts of things to improve planning. In the end, nothing was done. They waited till the last 2 weeks, and they started throwing things at us, as if that would make up for the previous years nothing was done. So we're going to require periodic reviews from you on what's being changed, and how it's being made more effective.
That's a great idea.
Because I've got developers in this town that are leaving Anchorage.
I hear the same stories.
And we know the developers, and I don't want to see that happen because I've seen what they built outside, and they're good quality projects.
Yeah.
But it's got to be done timely.
I agree.
And if you do one thing at all, please get electronic plan review up and running. We worked with the last administration 3 years, and there was always one problem after another why they couldn't get there.
Yeah.
And when I've talked to these developers, they say outside we do electronic plans review all the time. What's wrong with Anchorage?
There's a whole list of improvements that not only that I bring from my experience in dealing with downtown developers, but in the conversation, as you can imagine, once the appointment was announced, I got a lot of phone calls from people in the community. So I've had a chance to talk to builders of all sizes, which is great. Home remodelers to subdivision builders. And the interesting thing to me is that there's a lot of commonality no matter what size developer they are. And one of the things that those developers of all sizes point to is electronic submission. You can do your taxes electronically, you can do your PFD electronically. We need to move into the 21st century now.
I agree. We can actually even get our DipNet permit electronically. As my kid showed me how to do that.
That's correct.
It's a world. Got a question for you. What did you describe as your overall vision for the municipal department that will report to you?
Well, my overall vision is, and I tried to allude to some of the Rahoneman, which is all of the departments that I have the privilege of overseeing play an important role in making this community the #1 place to live, work, play, if I could steal AEDC's line. So my vision is what can each of those departments be doing, not only individually but collectively, to help us achieve that #1 status. It's about more than just a planning and permitting department that works well. It's about more than just a museum that's transparent but also extremely and educational to the community. It's about all of those different departments working together to achieve that vision of making this the -- place in the community. So I do look pretty fondly on the vision the ADC laid out. I'm a big believer in it. I want what I consider to be my hometown to be the #1 city in America to live, work, play. So whatever we can be doing as a community to help move the needle towards that, I think is really the vision that I have for this.
Well, thank you, Chris. And our commitment to you is once we confirm you, the Assembly will work with you.
Great.
And anytime you need us to hold a meeting or you need a work session or legislation, we're more than happy to work with you because this is our town. We want to make sure it's done successfully. I want to recognize the mayor joined us. Ethan, you can come up here if you want.
That's all right.
Okay.
Legislative hearing, I'll just sit back here like a good executive.
No problem. I just wanted to offer it to you. Other questions from Assembly members? Mr. Honeman.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And Ms. Training actually had addressed this kind of briefly. In the past administration, we had difficulty having direct communications with the directors of the department.
This one.
Do you
is corny.
envision being able to
Yeah.
have, for instance, if I were to make an appointment to see you in your office, I know you'll have a busy schedule, a lot of things to do. Will you be able to have candid conversations where we can address problems, concerns, issues, challenges, perhaps even some suggestions moving forward?
I look forward to it.
Will I have to work around, I mean, I certainly would be, respectful of contacting or communicating with anybody in the executive administration, but it was a source of frustration with some of the directors in the past administration. I couldn't talk to them without them getting permission or self-reporting to the administration that I was having a conversation about a golf game or something.
Yeah, noted. No, I pretty much am accessible almost any time, any day. So I hope to continue that, and certainly for this body as well.
And then lastly, if I could, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
assuming you take this role, of course, it looks like you are, and if you're confirmed, then I shouldn't have an issue seeing that. But what do you see Anchorage in the next 2 years, and how do you think your role will play in that?
It's at an important crossroads, and we've all heard the mayor speak about this a lot, and that is the changes in the state economic picture are going to have impacts on communities throughout Alaska. And our city in particular is poised to move away from that reliance on state funding for the things that we take for granted, whether it's trails, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's sidewalks, whatever. And this is a real opportunity for us to begin that transition out and develop our own internal self-sustaining financial picture. I had the privilege, for example, of attending a meeting with Assembly Member Demboski and Starr with what I think is one of the biggest secrets in the community, and that is a homegrown manufacturing sector that's starting out at South Berkeley Airport. Things like that are really what this department in this city should be there to support, to foster, and to grow. It's all about what can you do to retain and expand the businesses that you have in your community. And this is one example where I think there's a role, a very clear role that the city can play in assisting the success of this business. And that business in turn is going to make this community a better place. So I think there's a lot of opportunity right around the corner and just in our own backyards.
Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, can you describe one thing about the municipal departments that report to you that you would change right now?
Well, yes, that's an easy one because the sense that I've gotten from talking to department heads and front-level staff is that there's a real sense of isolation. There's a lot of siloing that has occurred within the municipal departments that doesn't need to be there. You talk about the difficulty of talking to department heads. Right now, individual departments have real difficulty talking to each other. And coming from a background like I have, where I do oversee much smaller but similarly segmented divisions or departments of the business that I'm running, silos have to go. The business will never succeed if people are operating in a silo. So right out of the gate, in fact, within the first 3 months, I would like to institute systems that help break down those walls between divisions, between departments, and get stronger communication and collaboration, and more importantly, going on between the various departments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Ms.
Chairman.
Demboski, ma'am.
Thank you. I was impressed by your answer because you're spot on right there. One of the questions you may or may not know the answer to, but I'm looking at, this title, Economic and Community Development Executive Director. We've had a lot of discussions about creating a position just like this. Can you tell me what the what your PCN is? Is this something that's already funded in this year's budget? And if not, where's the funding coming from? And if you don't know the answer to it, I've already given the heads up to Lance that I was gonna be asking this whenever I see new positions.
Yes.
I wanna know, where's the funding coming from?
As I understand it, also from Lance, that this is a mayor's office position funded by the mayor's office budget, at least for the remainder of 2015. Moving forward into 2016 and years beyond, that perhaps will change as we talk about reorganization, as some of you brought up before, and how we reorganize the departments ultimately, I think, will depend on, or will determine how this position is funded.
Sure. And what is the line item for the remainder of 2015?
So I think in the mayor's budget, assuming Chris's position will still be, it will still be within budget, within the mayor's overall budget number. So there isn't we haven't created a new line.
So he doesn't know how much he's making yet?
Oh, he does.
So that's what I wanna know.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll let him answer that. But we factored that in.
Okay.
Assemblymember
Perfect.
Kwiatkowski. So, we work with employee relations and payroll to make sure that we had all of that covered, and the rest of the mayor's staff also covered.
Perfect.
In the existing budget.
Perfect. That helps, but I'll let you finish the second part of that question.
What was the second part?
How much are you making?
Okay. I was offered $110,000 a year.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, no question. Just wanted to comment. I've known Chris for I don't know how many years now through various organizations, and have always been impressed with every interaction we've had, every project we've worked on together. I applaud the administration for selecting Chris for this position. I think while it is a leap up in responsibilities, it would be for just about anybody. I'm very confident that you're going to bring a lot to this position, and I would actually look forward to seeing what you do. So,
Thank you.
Chris, just another question from me, and I'll finish this up. You're going to be over Parks and Rec.
Sir.
My concern is Town Square.
Me too.
What's your philosophy and your view on Town Square? Because right now, from my perspective, I get all kinds of calls by people that don't feel safe in Town Square.
Yeah.
We've got to take a look at how do we remake Town Square.
My philosophy comes from a decade of working in and around Town Square, and it's shaped by the two following things. One, it's an underused park. The easiest way to clean up problems with a public space is to actually use a public space, and I'll turn to the park that's connected to the Visit Anchorage headquarters as an example. When I first started at the partnership, it was a very unsafe, at least perceived to be unsafe park. And through the event programming that we do, for example, over lunch hours, having concerts in the park, et cetera, has really helped turn that park around, because the one thing that unsavory individuals don't like is a lot of kids and moms and activities and things like that. So right out of the gate, from a professional standpoint, Town Square Park is under-programmed. And so that would be one of the things that we'd have to look at, is how do we encourage community groups like Anchorage Downtown Partnership and other community groups to utilize that public space more. In return, we'll see, I think, some real tangible public safety improvements because of that. Secondly, as somebody who has programmed Town Square Park, there are some challenges with the actual park design in making it a better used, more frequently used space. And I would look forward to addressing some of those design deficiencies with the community and look at what are the things that we can do, both short-term and small dollar, to help improve the usability of that park. But also, let's dream big and let's talk about longer-term, big-picture changes that can have a really profound impact on that public space.
I think there's some landscaping issues with this park that need to be addressed. I think we can do those economically and help clean up what goes on down there.
I agree.
Another area I want you to take a look at with your Parks and Rec hat on is on Lake Otis, Camel Creek Park. Right next to it is a fire station. And the city, since HOB is one of yours, was going to try and get rid of that. They didn't know it was parkland. It is. So I want from you guys is a plan to develop that old fire station, tear it down, and put parking in there. Because right now, on any given day that's sunny, you cannot find parking in Camel Creek Park. By next summer, I want a plan to change that. If it means we've got to put in a bond issue, I'm willing to do that. But I want that done so we can get adequate parking in there. Other questions from assembly members? Anything you want to tell us, Chris?
No, I know most of you and have known most of you for a while, and I just look forward to continuing to work with you, perhaps even more closely now than we have in the past.
Well, call us anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Good luck.
Recycling. Come on up, Mike. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
How you doing?
Great.
So tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm an Anchorage resident for a little over 40 years. I moved up here as an Air Force brat. My father was a career Air Force, and I graduated from East High in 1978, and then went off to school.
had
Came
kids
back
graduate
afterwards,
from.
and I've pretty much been in Alaska ever since. Worked in and around various forms of state and local government during most of my career, both in the nonprofit sector, for-profit sector, and state government, and local government, and then most recently with the school district.
Okay. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, nice to see you.
Good afternoon.
So, I think most of us know, but can you tell us anyway what departments are going to be reporting to you?
It's probably easier to describe the ones that aren't. It's the same organizational structure as the previous administration, with the exception of the departments that Chris just described reporting to him, previously reported to the manager's office. The only exception to that is that the Employee Relations Department will report to the municipal manager rather than directly to the mayor, as had been the case in previous administration. And that ER reporting relationship has gone back and forth. It's been done differently in different administrations. As we currently plan to move forward, it'll report through the manager's office.
Thank
So all
you.
the public safety functions, all of the enterprise functions, public transportation, health and human services, transportation inspection, et cetera.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike, we're looking forward to working with you again. We had fun the last time we worked together, and I'm glad you're back here again.
Thank you.
Because our structure of this city is unique. We've got a mayor and a city manager. The nice thing is you do your departments without any political spin to it. The mayor is political. He has to be. So it's good to see how well your branch of government is being ran. We appreciate the calls we get from you and our ability to call you at any time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know, unlike many local government structures, the manager is more of a chief operating officer than a chief executive officer. In Anchorage, with a strong working mayor position, the mayor actually acts as our CEO. And my responsibility is to lead and supervise most of the operating groups. So you're right, it is a little different structure than some folks in the community might otherwise expect, but it's one that Anchorage has really embraced, and many other Alaska communities as well.
Mr. Evans, questions, sir?
Where were you on the afternoon of September 10th, 2001?
I was in the Atwood building.
You were getting ready for an
No,
assembly
you weren't.
meeting,
You were
probably.
at Settlers Bay Golf Course.
That's where I was with you.
Yes,
The next
you were.
day I was in the Atwood building. Right, that was it was a fascinating day. I was working for the governor in those days, and we were trying to figure out whether the buildings had to be evacuated or not, because there were, at least at that point, unknown aircraft inbound to Anchorage that hadn't yet figured out that they weren't supposed to be inbound to Anchorage. So yeah,
And there was one missing in Canada.
there was a
They
bunch of
couldn't
them that ended up
contact
in
it.
Canada. Yeah, there's a KL flight though that was the one that was particularly worrisome the next day.
Just wondered.
I know, 'cause I had
Testing
this-
your memory a little bit.
Yeah, you win, Mr. Evans.
I had an assembly meeting scheduled, and we ran the assembly meeting. They were saying, "Are you sure?" Yeah, they're not aiming for our little building.
Yep.
Ms. Dombowski.
We're just not that important, Mr. Chair.
No, we're not.
Mike, it's great to see you here. We have a unique opportunity here because you have a lot of institutional knowledge, both of the school district and of municipality. So I'm excited to see what all the buzz is about you. I've always heard good things. What is your initial focus going to be? What's the first couple things you're going to tackle?
My initial focus I expect to be the same as my focus as long as I'm in this job, which is the safe, efficient delivery of municipal services. So that's what I have been doing since I started a week or so ago, and it's what I expect to do right up until I'm relieved of this position. In terms of some of the first things I did, I've been spending time sort of refreshing my relationships with the various departments that I'll be working with. My specific guidance to those folks is that they are to take the day-to-day responsibility for the management of their departments. They should not expect my office to micromanage them or to involve myself in their day-to-day operations beyond what they require in order to be successful. My primary responsibility in terms of the operational functions of the city will be to make sure that the departments that are providing services have the resources that they need to be successful. Resources being everything from people or funding to policy guidance when appropriate. So, towards that end, we've taken a lot of steps to reduce the amount of sort of process that departments are required, that have been required to go through here in City Hall in order to do their work. And that was one of my initial actions, along with other city leaders as well, at the direction of the mayor.
Sure. And on that note, just thinking of process, the previous administration, unlike Mr. Honeman, I walk into departments because I feel that's my right and responsibility to talk to people. But the previous administration, whenever assembly members had specific questions, they would like for us to send them all to George, and then he would ferret them out to whatever departments. Sometimes I find that helpful because I don't necessarily know this issue actually touches 3 departments. But what is your preferred method for us resolving our issues as an assembly member?
You, as far as I'm concerned, and I think all of the administration executives will echo this, you should get the information in whatever means you feel serves your interest best. If you want to reach out directly to a department manager, you should feel free to do so. If you want to reach out to my office or the mayor's office or anyone else, all of them will be required to answer your questions and to the best of their ability. Now, they may well communicate with me afterwards if they're one of the manager's reports and say, hey, I just heard from an assembly person, they had a question about this, here's how I answered it. So that I'm aware of it, and if necessary, other departments can be aware of it. But that should not constrain that level of interaction. So that's the direction that the mayor gave. The mayor gave all of the department managers within a couple of days of July 1st. Same thing goes for the media. Same thing goes with constituents, other government agencies, all of that. Department managers should be free to do that. Now, if they are uncomfortable with a question or something, then by all means they should ask for help or support. But if they're comfortable answering and they know the answer, I don't see any reason why my office adds any value by getting in the middle of that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And lastly, because you're not a newbie coming in, what do you look at? Obviously, I hear your initial focus. You're basically getting up and getting running. But what do you see as the biggest challenges in the next 12 months?
Well, clearly, the municipality as a whole, and many of the departments I work with, obviously, we're going to be dealing with fiscal challenges over the next 12 months. So we've already begun the work of planning for the 2016 budget development. The mayor's already bringing himself up to speed and dragging the rest of us along with him in terms of figuring out how we're doing in 2015, and then how we expect to close out 2015 budget and finance-wise, and then planning for 2016. And as you know, we use the budget for doing a lot more than just allocating funding resources. It is one of the primary tools that those of us in leadership positions, including the Assembly, use to set municipal policy and municipal direction. And we won't be doing it any differently going forward. So through that process, we'll be using your input, community input, agency input to help improve our operations, both in terms of their safety, their reliability, and their productivity.
Okay. So I'm assuming then IT is reporting directly to you.
No, IT, as they do now, will report to the CFO,
And who does the CFO report to?
the mayor.
So that part is not going to change either.
Correct. The
Okay.
mayor will have 5 or 6 direct reports, several of which you're meeting today.
Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson, then Mr. Peterson and Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment. I'm really glad to hear what you had to say in terms of process when we have questions to go directly to the department, because I guess I've been pleasantly rebellious with the prior administration because I've gone to the departments because it just makes a lot more sense to not waste the municipal manager's time when you can go directly to the department. So I'm glad to hear that that's your preference, how we deal with issues. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was just glad to hear you talk about your management style, not micromanaging people. I think that's a style that works well. You used to work well when I was doing that type of thing. And so, yeah, people, if they actually are good at their job and they know their job, they have a tendency to do a better job if you're not looking over their shoulder all the time. So, as far as the question is concerned, could you describe some strengths and weaknesses of a couple of departments that you're going to be supervising and how you might plan to address some of the weaknesses?
Sure. Do you have departments, specific ones you'd like me to talk about?
No.
Okay. Well, I've been spending a lot of time working with the police department, as I will continue to. It's the largest of the general fund agencies, as well as one of the most important in terms of public mission. We have a strong police force, a police force that is staffed almost to an individual with high-quality employees. We just don't have enough of them, in my opinion, and the mayor's opinion as well, even the department's opinion. So we're working now to try to figure out how we're going to address that. And some of that is a headquarters challenge, for want of a better term, in terms of identifying resources. Some of it is a recruiting and retention challenge, and that work will fall primarily on the department. So I'm working with the police department in that area. I have no concerns at this point about the operational work of the police department, and I don't want to suggest otherwise. And I'm very comfortable with the current command staff and the current deployment and the current operational and tactical strategies there. However, the community expects a more robust department, one that has greater capability than current resources allow, and I'm working with the department to help make that possible. A department that I'm enjoying working with again, as an example, that I believe continues to do an excellent job as they did 6 years ago, and as I believe they've generally done since, is the Maintenance and Operations Group, which is responsible for street maintenance, facility maintenance, and fleet maintenance. Alan Chakowski, who you're all familiar with, was, I wish I could take credit for hiring him, but he came on even prior to the Begich administration and was hired initially under Mayor Wirch and Vince Mee. Vince and I have gone around and around on a lot of different things, but he'll always get credit in my book for recruiting and selecting Alan Chakowski, who's done a great job for the city with whatever amount of resources he's given. That's a department that, from where I sit right now, I couldn't screw it up. It's not within the municipal manager's purview to make decisions that would be bad enough to screw that group up. They're going to plow the snow, they're going to fix the buildings, they're going to maintain the equipment, no matter what. And that's a testimonial to their department level leadership, the supervisors, and the line employees there. So those are two examples of places that, one that I'm spending quite a bit of time and energy in the near term, and one that frankly I'm not. I'll help them where necessary, but they haven't needed it, and I'll be spending my time in other places until they do.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
Yes, thanks, Mike. How would you describe your communication skills, and how will you use your communication skills to communicate with both the assembly and employees?
Well, I do a lot of communicating. I mean, that's, I don't know how, I'll let others judge the quality of it. But like many of you, people ask me what I do for a living, and I tell them I go to meetings. This is the primary way that a person in this position can affect change and can support others, is by working with them individually and in groups, and in some cases in public settings. And the mayor's made it clear I'm to take advantage of all of those opportunities as appropriate to help our departments be effective in their safe, reliable, productive delivery of services. So I'll be continuing to work that way. I don't think you'll see a dramatic change. Those of you that I've worked with in the past, I think you'll see that be working in a similar fashion to how I worked when I was a city employee several years ago. And I think how I worked at the school district in the meantime.
Mr. Evans, anything?
No.
Mr. Busk, anything? Last comment?
I'll just make one last comment. One thing that I have seen as an issue, specifically, Chris is gone, but specifically relating to community development. Of course, some of the most contentious issues are when citizens try to apply for a permit and there's something in the process. And it's happened more than once where the municipal manager has pulled in code enforcement. They've pulled in, Jerry Weaver, and they brought in a couple extra people, and the municipal manager has sat down with constituents and myself and actually understood what his departments were doing, and in fact twice they were applying the law in a manner that he didn't know, and it was actually not right. So from my perspective, it will be, I hope you'll be that kind of leader when the issues can't be resolved at a department level. You would be willing to bring everybody to the table and try to be that facilitator. To me, I found that's been some of the most valuable ways that I've used the municipal manager, to be honest with you. And, I always, just like Elvie had said, I just walk into the departments because I feel like I'd rather let the people that do this every day educate me on the second side of the story and deal with it there. But sometimes, in fact, we can't get resolution there. So I know you're very non-micromanaging. I like that. I'm the same way. But there will be times when I will call upon you to try to help facilitate the solution, and I hope you're open to that.
Absolutely, it's one of the ways that I'll support the line departments is by helping them with issues that they can't resolve amongst themselves. I mean, the expectation is that they will have tried, and that there will have been more than just a good faith effort, but a real effort to resolve those issues. But occasionally there will be conflicts, some of which are structural, some of which are more case by case. And in those cases, my office and other city execs will actively participate in resolutions.
Mike, since you've got a degree in political science and history, I understand, got a question for you. How would you describe the organizational climate here in the city, organizational management of the city? And does it need changed?
Well, I think I spoke earlier to the issue of the role of the headquarters functions in overall city government. I think this administration will see the City Hall in its role as supporting the line departments as they perform their functions out in the community. I think you'll see less of an effort to drive public policy from support departments than you've seen in the past. And nothing wrong with either of those approaches. I think this one will simply be different from what has been the case in the past. So decisions that previously would have had to go through several steps at City Hall after a department had made a decision will probably not require City Hall involvement in the future. If a department makes a decision that's within their budgeting authority and within their staffing, that's within their codified responsibilities, they're going to get the authority to just go ahead and move forward on that without secondary or tertiary reviews from City Hall.
Have you looked at the policy procedure manual recently, the PEP manual? I have. Would you spend some time going through it?
Gosh,
It's
I
archaic.
hope not, no.
A lot of them need changed.
Yeah, and it's and I'll make, unless it's been radically changed since I left, it's
about this
it
thick.
does need, it is, but frankly, given what it purports to try to do, it could be 10 times thicker. It's inconsistent in the sense that there are some city functions that are described in intricate, immutable detail in the PNPs, and then there are others that are simply ignored. So it's somewhat inconsistent. And I don't say that, because it should be changed or fixed. It's just the way that document and the process that leads to the development of that document has been carried out over time. So,
If you take a look at it, I would appreciate it.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Because actually, when
Forward to
Tony
the
Knowles was
opportunity.
mayor, I actually looked at it as a class project for my master's, so
That's
I'm
a
familiar
bad
with
class, Mr. Chairman.
it. Had to do it. You know how that goes.
Poorly taught.
Police department.
We
I
should
want
have
you to
one.
make sure the police department reflects the city's population whole. I am concerned because we're the largest native village in Alaska, yet I'm not sure we have the representation of the police department that reflects that.
I'm quite confident we do not.
So,
I mean, at least numerically.
I want to know where this block is at. If it's the aptitude test, let's find a more relevant aptitude test. I want to figure out where the block is for our native brothers and sisters and get them working on the force.
Well, as I mentioned, recruiting for the police department is one of the large challenges facing the administration going forward. We are planning to review all of the elements of the application and recruiting process to make sure they remain appropriate and relevant for 2015 and beyond. So that will be one of the elements of that review.
I appreciate that because I'll be asking you as we go through in a year or so, where are we at on that?
I think you can be confident that the mayor will have already asked that question of us.
Mr.
So
Honeman,
we should be ready for it.
thank you, Mike.
I guess I want to make clear, and I'll take a sidebar as to some specifics if you need examples, but I want to make it clear, I did not have an issue with making access to any of the departments or asking questions specifically. The thing that I found somewhat frustrating was it was not a consistent message, and oftentimes the department head was very reluctant without checking first to give specific, and sometimes it was policy, sometimes it was resources, staffing questions. So I want to make sure that it's very clear that I had no problems with access, nor did I ever, again, maybe it was more on the rebellion side and whatnot. But I had more context at department level, and that's where I found a lot of my information was more within the line step. The operations side, as Mr. Kowalski stated, sometimes people are operating under a set of rules or guidelines and policy, and the department heads may not necessarily be that connected or hadn't been. So that was the challenge that I found. And the other question to follow on, and it is a question, is we have a lot of commissions, and I know that generally those are appointed by the mayor. And I suspect that they're viewed more as input for the mayor and the mayor's staff. But are you, as a municipal manager, how do you perceive using information or suggestions or issues handling? We have committees on the assembly, of course, to deal with our own legislative side, policy decision-making, etc. The commissions, I find them to be underutilized. And I'm wondering if you have a different perspective on that.
No, I don't. And I think there are some departments that have historically embraced the advisory commissions that have been established to support them, and others, frankly, that have been less interested in that. And our clear direction is that if the commission exists, if in the assembly and the administration's wisdom, such an entity has been codified and created and appointed and staffed, that it's incumbent on the departments to take full advantage of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from assembly members? Thank you, Mike. Look forward to working with you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Lance, come up and join us. Good to see you again. So tell us what you're going to be doing as Management and Budget Director.
So in addition to just preparing and tracking the operating and capital budget for the municipality, I'm working with individual departments on a regular basis, looking at their general expenses, their revenues, any new ideas they might have for efficiencies or, kind of looking into the future as well as just day-to-day operations.
Okay. Elvie and I talked to you recently on changing the way the budget's done.
Yes.
Can you relate to this body what we talked to you
Sure.
about?
So, I was in preparation and getting to know all the nuances of the duties of the Director of Office of Management and Budget. One of them is the method in which the budget is created. And there is a requirement that the budget actually be created to respect a service level, which basically means, a particular service level for plowing snow is so many people, so much money, so much revenue, and this is the result of that. When departments are asked to add or remove during first quarter budget revisions, they can, that's how it's presented. And since we talked, I've been looking into find out if our actual, our software would allow us to actually create it that way. Because the last time the city created a service level budget was back in 2005 or 6. And then it was at that time we stopped doing it. And one of the reasons is our team budget software it's not as easily to do as the way it's been done in the past. Philosophically, I think it's a good way to present it. It's difficult to do for all departments. It's very simple to do for transit, for planning, for streets. It's probably not as simple to illustrate for folks like finance or audit or some of the other support departments, employee relations. It's not that it can't be done, but so what we're doing right now is we're contacting the folks that actually manage that software piece to see if we can manipulate it for this time around. Right now, I'm not so sure that we could do it because of the time. We're really within a 120-day window to create it in a different fashion than we have in the past. But philosophically, I want the departments to think about that because I think it's helpful for a budget process, it's helpful for the legislative branch, it's helpful for the mayor. But it's not simple for all departments. So, and a lot of departments have never done it before, given that the budget schedule is a little bit behind. I have to kind of talk to see the benefits of that, because not only are departments going to be looking at a budget challenge for 16, coming up with a new method for 16 might not be ideal in creating this year's budget, but possibly for 17. Honestly, in the long run, I think it's a good approach. I can tell you from a director's perspective, I did not like doing it the first time. But after I did it once, it was a lot easier to build the next year's budget. It was a lot easier to explain. And really, I think the reason we're not doing it anymore is not so much a philosophy changes, it must be limitations. So I'm going to be talking to the administration about doing that, because honestly, as I expressed to you, it's a lot easier to manage from a citizen's perspective. They can see what they're buying and how much it costs, and if you decide that you can't do it, you know what you're not getting. The complications is when, as one service department relies on another services department, and if you don't have one, what's the effect on the other? So that's the little nuances there. I'm really going to be visiting with the budget coordinators for the departments to figure out how we look to doing that in the future and what are the goods and the bads. And then with that information, I can give the administration some guidance on the pluses and minuses to it.
Good, because I think, Lance, we're going to be pursuing this. I'm sure my budget chairman will be working on it. Ms. Gray-Jackson, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a question, just a couple of comments. So the issue is team budget.
As I spoke with my staff, I asked them, I said, this is a picture of what I want to create. Can we create this in team budget? And the initial response was no. And I said, well, we need to find out if we can. So that's why we're reaching out to some folks to find out if we can.
Okay, and if I can follow up, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you're asking for more research, because, and I thought I heard you say that all departments didn't have service levels, but they did. Every single department had service levels. Even when we had a department called non-departmental, there were service levels, and it was a wonderful tool. well, for me when I was staff to the Assembly, wonderful tool for dealing with the budget in many ways, and in particular when the Assembly came, when the budget came to the Assembly and they wanted to make revisions, it was so easy when we had those service levels. And just like I was adamant about getting the detailed financial statements back in the CAFRA, I'm pretty adamant about having service levels come back. So I'm hopeful that that'll happen before I leave. But anyway, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before you leave, do you mean this meeting or the Assembly?
Anchorage.
Okay. Just about, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I have to say, and I don't mean this disparagingly to any of the other appointments, but when I saw you being appointed, I thought this was a brilliant choice. Absolutely. It was, and it's because I watched you over the past 3 years over in transit, and I think you did a remarkable job over there. I mean, really considering the challenges that you face with the federal funding, with all the different nuances over there, it takes a lot to impress me, and I was very impressed. I thought this was absolutely a brilliant choice, and I think you will bring that, though you've been around, I think it's a fresh set of eyes to leadership, and I think it's something that will be very valuable for this administration specifically, because you know so much about how the city processes work.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that. So I really am not going to grill you. I'm assuming you're going to tell me that your PCN is funded through the mayor's office.
No, I'm not going to tell you that.
Oh.
What I'm going to tell you is my PCN is funded through, we have a vacant analyst in our department that has not been filled yet, so we're not going to fill it for the rest of the year, and those savings will be for paying for my salary for 2015. And I have talked to my crew to find out what the benefit of that is, and that position was created under a organizational structure without a director. It was reporting to the CFO, so I want to know if that is still needed, and do we consider that in 16? Because I will be taking over some of the responsibilities that Maryland had, and then that will then go down and allow others. So we just started that conversation earlier this week.
Okay, and I'm assuming you'll have parity with the last O&B director as far as cost of this position. Do you know the cost of this position?
The cost of my position is $120.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for being ready for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans, sir.
Nothing really other than I too was very glad to see you put in this position, but I am easily impressed. So I have no questions.
I'll try not to let you down.
Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's one thing in OMB that you would change right now besides service levels?
I have a lot, so I'm going to try to pick
Just one. One.
I think the communication, the collaborative communication between our folks and the budget coordinators and departments. Individually, they're assigned, but collectively, I think there's a lot of really good ideas that they each do in their departments that could benefit other departments. I've seen it because I've been working with my budget. So I want to bring my folks together with those budget coordinators from all of the other departments and kind of share those ideas, and I'm going to be doing that in the next couple of weeks here, working through the department heads. Because there are a lot of really smart people in departments that have built budgets over the decades that have ideas that they have not been able to implement or have that might work for another department that hasn't been shared. And I'm aware of some of them, and I have a really good relationship with most budget coordinators in the direct departments and the support departments. So I tell the folks upstairs, there's more than just 5 of us here. There's 30 of us. We just have to use them.
Right. Mr. Chairman, can I follow up?
Good, ma'am.
Okay. As chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, and I've known you for a very long time, I'm really pleased that you're going to be O&B director. And pretty soon, the Assembly is going to have its own budget analyst, which is going to be really, really great, because as you know, and everybody in this room knows, that the Assembly is the eyes and ears of this municipality. We appropriate money, and we need to pay attention during the course of the year to make sure that what we appropriate is really being used for that purpose. And I'm going to be really, really pleased to have our own budget analyst on board, who not only is going to work well with you and your staff, but also have the ability to get into systems and look at things and compare notes. When you present something to us, we'll have somebody to say, oh, wow, well, we see things a little bit differently. And so I really look forward to that and working with you along with me just as an Assembly member and my colleagues, but also as Chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I just want to congratulate you on the appointment to this position. I think you're going to do an excellent job. And I thought you were doing a great job in the Transportation Department, and I hope whoever is taking over for you can fill your shoes.
Thanks for the support.
Mr. Holman.
Yes, well, I'll add on the accolades. I think you're an excellent manager, and I think that if you look at corporations from around the country, you'll find that from time to time, they headhunt CEOs and CFOs and directors and managers. And I think a successful team is finding someone that can build widgets and then turn around and you actually are selling the widgets, or you're a corporation that down another stream or something where they buy out companies and such. And I envision you as someone who can take your skills as a manager from where you are or where you were, encompass what your experience and skills are, and be wonderful at O&D. So with that said, I'm going to ask you, in successful budgeting, I think Ms. Gray-Jackson talked about briefly, one of the things that's very important and crucial is that our charter says we can't go broke. We can't print money like the federal government. We can't borrow more than we have approval from the voters under bond. There are some exceptions, of course, to emergencies and things of that nature, lawsuits and such. But we have to balance our budget, and it's really critical. We've seen budget surplus after budget surplus, which to my mind means that we've had vacancies usually, and also or service levels that didn't get performed. And I think that goes to the service level budgeting that we were talking about. So my question would be, how are we going to be able to, I guess in kind of a comment, we had a gentleman who was watching, and I'm not sure it was the state, it could have been the school district, but I'm thinking it was the state. But they had kind of like a virtual checkbook online. And I'm asking, how are you going to get the community to participate in our budget? We have 3 or 4 public hearings that we are required by charter to hold the municipal assembly meetings at the end of the year. If you guys start essentially now building the budget for the coming year, how are we going to get the budget to the community so that they can see where their tax dollars are being spent? So we spend a lot of time trying to defend. For instance, we had 2 contracts recently that were, we know because we get briefed, but how can the public know that their money is being spent very well and the net results, if you will? So that's a challenging question.
So I don't have the complete answer, but I do think that whatever we present to the public, it should be easily understood and simplistic. It shouldn't be the budget book. If people want to get into the gory details, they can obviously have access to the budget book. You should all have access to the budget book. Once the approved budget is done and the first quarter revised done, if you want the entire book, you should have access to the entire book. You shouldn't have to dig it up online if you want the paper copy. But I do think citizens ought to know what they're getting, what they're paying for, what the changes would be. But honestly, Mr. Holman, in transit and in traffic and a variety of other things, you should be able to explain what you're buying in an elevator, and it should be able to show it that way. So people want more information because the basics are the basics. And so, what's the expenditures, what's the revenues, what are the sources, are they changing? Is there a tie between that particular revenue source and that particular expenditure? And then it gets more complicated. But I found that many people, if you ask them, they'll say, I'm paying too much for taxes, but then you ask them, what are you paying for? And they can't tell you that. So I think educating them on that is really going to be important, and it's not difficult. I mean, it's not. You can look at the green card, but most people don't. Some people do, and they just say that's too much. And I think it's important for them to know what they're getting for what's on that green card.
Paul, anything else?
Just to follow up, if there's some way to do, and I agree with his principle, keep it simple so that everybody can kind of look at a dashboard. I'm envisioning a dashboard. You see your gas gauge, your temperature gauge.
Yeah.
So perhaps the money that comes in at the beginning of the year and then where we're at in relation to the quarter, we see it on the monthly budget, financial actuals and such. Something like that. And I guess my other challenge is, we also know that it's a very large organization. We hire people, a lot of people. And That's the cost of doing business, performing services. But one of the challenges I know, in particular the police department, is, and fire, all the larger organizations have more challenge, is vacancy and the vacancy factor. And it seems to me that different administrations view it differently, but it seems to me like that number is a target that has to be met, not this is what you have historically that we manage around. Like, for instance, if you're losing 10, 20 people a year on average to attrition, that's the number at the very beginning. Yeah, you get your full budget, but no, not really is this amount, because this is what your vacancy is normally going to be. So that's what we're targeting for. We're shooting. And I think that's going to be a big part of the challenge, or the key to some of the solutions for the police department, fire department, some of the larger organizations.
So, Mr. Holman, I was on the receiving end of vacancy factors for 16 years, so I'm well aware of how they can affect or help you manage or not your budget. So I will bring a different perspective on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions? I want a commitment of you, Lance. I want you here for a couple of years. And you're the type of people headhunt. I don't want to go through this exercise with you, get you in the position where we want you. I want you to commit to us to spend a couple of years in this position.
Honestly, I'm excited for this opportunity. I am every day. It is just amazing.
Because everybody up here wants to confirm you and get this on the road. Okay?
Thank you.
Take care of yourself, sir. Mr. Falsley, come join us. Mr. Evans, do you have a conflict of interest in this case?
Yeah, I can't confirm.
He knows too much. He knows too much.
Mr. Chairman,
So tell us about his vices. Where do we dig to find them?
It's pretty much on the surface. I don't even have to dig too far.
Welcome to the meeting, sir. So we know what you're going to be appointed to, have been appointed to. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Happy to do so. So I too find my way to the municipality of Anchorage by way of the Air Force. My father was a dentist in the Air Force, so I moved up to then Elmendorf, went to 8th grade at Central, and then was a graduate of
What year did you come up here?
Oh geez, it must have been in the early 90s.
Okay. Please continue.
Yeah. After leaving Diamond High School, I disappeared to college at Stanford University, where I majored in physics. Then I shook the Etch-a-Sketch of life, started over at law school, and on my way to New Haven, Connecticut, where I graduated from Yale Law School. Before coming right back home. When I was at Yale, I was the only Alaskan the first year I was there. I was one of two my second and third year. The other was the son of the Ninth Circuit judge from Fairbanks, who had no particular desire ever to return to Alaska. The guy grew a filial sense of duty to our beloved home state. I came back to clerk for the Alaska Supreme Court, where I worked for Chief Justice Alex Brenner. I left there to work in private practice for a few years before accidentally moving to Washington, D.C. for 5 years. When I was in Washington, D.C., I was an appointee in the Interior Department, where I ultimately served as the Deputy Chief of Staff at the Bureau of Land Management, before finally pulling the exit cord by having a baby. So we came back to Alaska, where to help raise our 2-year-old, who turned 2 this week. Found my way into the erstwhile law offices of Cedar, Wendland, Evans, and Philippi, where I shared a wall with someone known well to you on this committee.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Evans, sir?
I don't have any questions. I think I know the candidate pretty well.
Mr. Bowski?
Bill, it's great to have you here. We've already had many opportunities to work together. And I know you have an impressive resume, but I don't really see any municipal experience. So I know this will be a learning experience for you, which you have already taken very seriously. Because every time I talk to anybody in the Department of Law, you're always learning something. Oh, he's reading this, he's doing that. So I appreciate that diligence, and I think you're going to bring an interesting perspective. You do have a deep bench right now in the Department of Law. You have a lot of 20, 30-year attorneys that I'm sure are very excited to help you understand how the municipality works, and I appreciate just the opportunities you've had to engage already. With respect to the municipality, obviously, having the opportunity to work for lawyers before, it's not like being a dentist where you can just go to another town, open up a practice, and it's the same thing. It's totally different. So what do you think your strengths and weaknesses are going to be when it comes to basically being the lead attorney for the municipality of Anchorage?
That's a very good question. I will say I think I come to the job with a little bit of a heads-up advantage, having served 2 tours of duty on the Board of Ethics. So I'm intimately familiar with Title I, Chapter 15. That one is already under the belt. I think that attorneys come in all flavors and stripes, and there are some who are very comfortable carving out a very particular niche and then advising people over and over as to how to comply with healthcare privacy laws, for instance. There are other attorneys who are much more in the generalist category, and I have always seen myself in that latter camp. So if you were to ask what I did while in private practice, the answer, which is a not particularly responsive answer, is civil litigation, because the substance of the civil litigation could be from A to Z. My involvement in municipal work is actually maybe a little more than might be reflected in the resume. While working at Cedar Wendland, Evans, and Philippi, we represented a number of school districts. And as you all know, school districts are themselves organs of their various localities, so the relationship can be somewhat different. And as a result of that work, and in particular my representation of the Association of School Boards in the Ketchikan school funding case, I became very familiar with Alaska Statutes Title 29, our local government article, and I will say that the other portion of my response to this question is that I am a reader. So there's approximately 3 linear feet of Anchorage Municipal Code. I'm about a foot through it. I hope to be through the last 2 feet in short order. I would describe my aptitude or my understanding of the code as above average now. In short order, it'll also be unparalleled.
Well, I look forward to having the opportunity to work with you. And as your predecessor will tell you, I like to argue, and sometimes with lawyers. And don't worry, you will be wrong occasionally.
Right.
Don't take it personally.
Bill, you said you worked on the Ketchikan case or read it?
We entered an amicus brief on behalf of the Association of School Boards, the Association of Superintendents, and the Council of, I forget how that acronym decodes, AXA, effectively the supervisor. So we are not a party to that litigation. That litigation is styled Ketchikan Gateway Borough versus State of Alaska. But there are multiple parties who have weighed in, and we represented one faction who has weighed in.
Because I've been following that case, because if the Supreme Court upholds Superior Court decision, it's going to radically change how education is funded in this state.
I completely agree with you, and that is one of the reasons.
We can save about $200 million, approximately $240 million, if the state has to pick up the bill. I'm sure the legislature will change the law so that can't possibly happen before that gets there. But you are our attorney, not just appointed by the mayor, but you are our attorney. We have an attorney that works for us, but she doesn't represent the city in court. You do. So our relationship with you is a little bit different, because we view what you do as critical to our ability to legislate. And if we write something that you know is not legal, let us know. And if we step off the cliff, at least we know before we walk off the cliff. So we appreciate that.
And I appreciate that rule. The role of the municipal attorney is defined both in the charter and in the code. Unlike the other executives that you're meeting today, I am also appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the assembly, but my job is to render legal service to the municipal government, the government including not just the mayor and not just the administration, but also the assembly. You're very right, Mr. Traney, in the code. By operation of the code, the municipal attorney represents the municipality in all legal matters and is responsible for bringing prosecutions of misdemeanor crimes. So I'm sensitive to the fact that I serve many masters within this role. I think that actually requires a little bit of juggling from time to time, but I'll hope to give it my level.
Well, Bill, this came up because when I was on the summit the first time, I asked for a legal opinion, and it was sent to me by the city attorney, and I saw Tom Fink's initials on it. And I asked Green, I said, why does it have Tom Fink's initials? Because I don't send anything to you guys he hasn't read first. And that's how we end up getting our own attorney. Because I don't expect any answer we get from you to have to be filtered by anybody else in the city government. Another thing would be court suits. The city has a habit of getting court suits filed against it because we're the deepest pockets. but then we keep appealing them rather than just settling them. And a good attorney needs to know when something needs settled. So would you please look at bringing court suits to us with a settlement if you think it needs to be done? I don't want to just keep appealing things that should be settled because it's cheaper.
Take the Kenny Rogers advice, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. We will be in with you to talk about settlements when they're appropriate.
Thank you. And we're going to have periodic legal briefs from you, executive sessions where you tell us, these are all the cases we have, these are plus and minuses. Thank you.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Gray-Jackson.
Chairman. You sort of asked my question, but I just have a couple of comments. And I have to say that I'm really impressed with you so far, and I probably will continue to be impressed. But two of the things that impressed me was your interaction at your very first assembly meeting. I was really impressed. Although you had been on the ethics board, so it may not have been too difficult to respond to a question, but still you handled it really, really well. And I was impressed, and I've also been impressed by the way you've handled the MLMP RCA rate case situation. But there is one thing that concerns me. I found out today from you that you used to live in Mr. Trainee in my district, but you're moving, and so I'm probably going to have some issues with your confirmation. I wanted to let you know.
Where's he moving to? Where's he
Out of our
moving to?
district.
I know, but where? Not to Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr.
We have
Chairman.
not closed the Sand Lake area house yet, so we will continue to be Rogers Park constituents at least to the end of the summer. And
Oh.
I suppose there is an
Oh,
option
okay.
to become absentee landlords, but I'm not sure that's really required.
Anything else, Sylvia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my question to you is, why would you want to give up your shared wall with this gentleman at the end of the table and take the job as...
Well, I can answer that. No.
You can move down here. I don't want to be here.
That there was a moment when I had been approached about this that involved some serious hand-wringing, where I thought, do I want to trade my unlimited vacation allowance, total autonomy, and quality compensation to spend a lot of alternative Tuesdays and late nights in the Lusac Library? And there were those who said I would be crazy to take this job. I'll tell you, I take this job willingly and with enthusiasm because it was never my goal to be just a workaday attorney. And I took the Etch-a-Sketch of Life and went to law school in large measure because I care about policy issues. And I know that this is not a policy role that I now serve in, but I'm aiding those who are making the policy for the municipality. And in particular, this is my home. This is where I grew up. This is where my daughter will grow up. I care about this place. So there are not good answers to some of those questions. There were some negotiations that happened between my wife Jeanette and I about whether we were going to go to Hawaii again as many times as we did last year, but that's how we resolved it.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you. Well, I noticed that you did attend a couple of marginal schools, I guess, and did pretty well. Actually, congratulations on all that you have accomplished so far. And thankfully, you came back to Anchorage and Alaska to fly your trade, so to speak. Even more thankful that you're willing to step away from what probably is more lucrative in private practice, not to have to answer to the bosses, so to speak, as you said earlier. What did you do the first day on your job?
Did I do my first day on the job? Well, so that was the end of table. At that point, I think I was on my fourth night of staying up till midnight reading things. So on the 6th, I went to the first executive level cabinet meeting, for want of a better term, and then began the process of meeting everyone. So, as you may well know, the municipal attorney oversees an office of 53 full-time employees. We have 12 full-time attorneys in the civil division. We have 15 full-time attorneys in the criminal division and 1 administrative hearing officer. My recollection is that most of Monday was spent wandering around, shaking hands, and trying to learn names as rapidly as possible.
Well, congratulations again, and I had a few other specific ones that you answered, the majority of them as you discussed it through it. And I'm only sad that you don't want to move over to Mr. Peterson, nice district. Like you have some prime real estate, particularly in Basher, right over the Chugach Mountain right side. So. But in any event, I too am very impressed on your first meeting night. You know, you gave us, I think I remember you question, you gave us a lane, and something else you used in terminology. I thought that was very well worded and gave us some good information. So I will say that, much like I said earlier about who do you answer to, so to speak, there have been times in the past, and there have been some attorneys that I'm very fond of. There's a lot of issues with civil training. But I was very concerned that perhaps we weren't getting the information that we really needed from a global perspective, more of what was being directed, if you will. What I know of attorneys is you take on a client. Well, you have many clients here. And so who's your primary client? And in particular, if an ordinance was laid on the table and it was from the administration, is that your client? Or because it comes before the assembly and we have legal questions, is there a conflict? And can you advise one half of the branch to be your client as a primary, and then do you have to hand it off to someone else to argue? Because generally it's 2 or 3. My understanding is you research your position, you take 2 or 3 similar briefs or findings from law to support your decision or your opinion, and I think it kind of goes the other way, and then you kind of hash it out, and somebody has to be that decision maker and which direction you choose. So how do you handle those conflicts?
I actually think it's a very difficult question, and prior to accepting this job, I actually called Bar Ethics Council to ask for some guidance on that question. I think we'll take it as it comes, but my current strategy is to provide the best answer I know how to give, because in that case, there's no massaging of an answer for one party versus anybody else. The answer I will give to the mayor is the answer I will give to you, because it is the best answer that I know how to give. I think unless there's reasons where I will need to deviate from that approach, that's going to be the approach I'm going to take.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, any comments?
No, I mean, other than...
I know your conflict of interest. You like him.
Well, yeah, you can tell from his resume, he's a very educated and very...
I'm wondering how we can afford him.
He's it's sort of my point, is you're getting a good value for your dollar with having Bill in this role. He can work just about anywhere he wants in the legal profession. We were gratified he came to work with us, and equally gratified he's willing to work for the municipality. So it's just our fortune, is how I would describe it.
One last thing, and I'll tell you welcome aboard. I need a replacement for you on the ethics board. So, figure out and send us a name. Because the administration is going to need it to appoint somebody, and we're going to need to confirm them. So get the name through the system. Because I talked to the ethics board this week, and that's the one thing they complained about. Not only don't you pay us and don't feed us lunch, you took him.
The first time I served on the ethics board, we did get paid, and I came back and was surprised to see that now we got $0 per hour.
I know, and you don't get fed either. But thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Trainee,
Ma'am?
if I may, I'll just point this out because Mr. Evans is always the funny one in the group. And so as I was sitting here looking at your resume, it doesn't happen often, but I actually realized that you're younger than I am. And Mr. Evans piped up and said he was old enough to be your dad. So I'll just say,
I don't feel that's funny, but...
No, I'm very excited to see you with us, and I just want to say that our I said it earlier again, but I need to reiterate it for Mr. Honeman because it came up. One of the issues that I have already sat down and talked with Bill about was the fact that confidentiality is very important to me, and so Mr. Trainee brought it up too. If I'm coming to an issue with an attorney and I'm thinking about proposing it, it doesn't mean by the time we're done our discussions I'll still think it's a good idea. So confidentiality is important to me when I am talking about potentially drafting a law or changing something because I want to work through it, and that is very important. And he did validate my concerns and agree with that, and so I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. So I'll be shocked if I start seeing mayor's initials on an opinion that I asked for, and that would be a problem for me, but I don't think that's going to be an issue in this case, so that's just the last thing I wanted to bring up is that we did talk about it.
I don't think we're going to have that problem in this case, because I didn't tell the other attorney I had a little no confidence I had the votes to do it. He recognized that that's the reason we got our position. Took it out of his office.
Well, happy to be here, happy to contribute to the emerging plurality of bills who will sit at the assembly meetings, and look forward to working with all.
But we look forward to approving you on Tuesday. Thank you, sir. Karen? How you doing, ma'am?
Very well, thank you.
Thanks for being here. So tell us all about you and what you're being appointed to.
All about me?
25 words or less.
Look, I was going to say, I was going to start way back at the old Elmendorf Hospital where I was born.
That doesn't exist anymore. We all know that.
I was very devastated when they tore down.
What year were you born there?
You know I worked
I can ask any question. You don't have to answer it.
Ask me that, but it was 1966. I'll be 50 next year, and my birthday is a big deal, so I'll be sending you all meeting requests for annual return.
Actually, bring a cake to us for the semi-me, celebrate your birthday. But I wouldn't suggest you get it from the North Slope. That's a small problem.
I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I was born here. My parents have been here since 1962. They're still in Anchorage. Three of my other siblings escaped to the lower 48, and I have not. I sometimes complain about the dark and the cold, but I love it here, and I plan to stay here. I have been working in HR for 24-ish years or so. This is my third rotation through the municipality of Anchorage. I was previously the EEO director and the benefits director. So I'm very excited to hopefully be coming back. And I don't actually start in my position until Monday. So my current employer, Providence, I assure you, has received way more than 40 hours of work from me these last 4 weeks of the notice that I gave them. So I will finish up with them today, and we'll hopefully start my new job on Monday.
Good. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is one thing that you would change right now within the Employee Relations Department?
Well, since I haven't started yet, so I did get to do a walkthrough with one of the managers, and one of the things that I have heard is that it's hard to run departments if you have trouble getting the employees hired. So it's my understanding that there may be some issues with delays in being able to recruit and hire staff. So that's one of the things that I plan on looking at right away. Another thing is morale. And my walkthrough, we spend a lot of time at work, and I have a tendency to want to enjoy work as much as possible. And I don't know if it's just because I was walking through and a lot of them don't know me, and they're like, there's a mystery walking through the office, but employee morale, so not just for the employee relations department, but for the municipal employees in general. I'm hoping to be able to work with some folks and come up with some ideas, potentially non-monetary incentives for employees to get them more engaged and more excited about being at work.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Good, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad that you mentioned these two things because there are hiring issues within the municipality in terms of time frame and how long it takes to get someone hired. And it's not you. There are morale issues, not just employee relations, but all over the place because I talk to lots and lots of employees. So I'm glad to see that these are two issues that you will work with right away. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Karen, I've got a couple of questions for you, and I'll move on to everybody else, but morale is a real problem for our city employees. We've got a toxic morale problem in the city of Anchorage, and I'd like you to work to fix that and let us know what the summit can do to help you. But when I've got people quitting their job because they don't want to work for the city anymore, they've been so beaten up by the city government, they want to leave here. That's not the answer to the problem. When we treat our employees like the enemy, that's a problem. The whole timekeeping system needs to be sacked. You should go back to the system we used to have before, because this current system where the people have to use their card to check into work, use their card to check out, and if they're a minute late, they get a letter of reprimand from their department head, doesn't work. So we've got to change that. Let us know how we can help you, because I appreciate you looking at and realizing the morale problem is a big problem. Both Ilva and I used to get calls from departments. Could you call HR because we can't get anybody hired for this job? It's not they didn't select somebody, it's just that it sat there forever. And that's not a good way to run the town. Was that right, Elby?
You are right, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm glad that you picked up on the employee morale situation, because I was informed of that before I was ever elected to this position, when I happened to run into employees as I was going through neighborhoods door to door. And so that I don't know what the answer to that question is, but hopefully we can get to the bottom of it, because a happy employee is a much more productive employee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you. I should have disclosed earlier too, Mr. Studi. Ms. Williams has been a long-time constituent in our area, has worked on and supported me, I know, so has Mr. Studi. And so I welcome you back, and I'm thankful that we're able to, I hope to be able to afford you enough where you can stay and support work here. And so I guess, the change in the world of workforce and people coming to work in the municipality, as I understand it, things have changed a bit, particularly when it comes to retirements. One of the hooks that we used to have in public employment is a retirement system, and largely that's run by the state. I mean, we were doing contributions and such things, but now largely it's run by the state. Is that something that we as a municipality can do as far as a culture? We used to be able to tell someone, you could work here, and you may not make a lot of money, but at the end of the day, you get more than a pocket watch, or whatever you manage to save, and hope and pray that the market is right in the right conditions to win. Is there something that you think organizationally as a culture we can change here? And if so, how do you see your role in taking that?
I think there are, like I was saying, those incentives would probably need to be non-monetary. But one big one just to consider is most people value flexibility even more than money sometimes when it comes to work. So one of the things, Chairman Trainee mentioned that the timekeeping system needs to go. At Providence, we use Chronos, but we have lots of flexibility. We have many different FTEs and work structures. We have people who work 0.8 or 0.5 or point whatever. We have flexible work schedules where people can work 410s or I know the 980s went away. The Chronos system actually has a little more flexibility than what apparently is here. Like I said, I don't work here yet, so I have no insight into that. But one of them is trying to figure out some sort of more flexibility for people. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to delve into that yet, but there are other things we can probably do to incentivize employees and let them know that they're valued and appreciated here. That doesn't necessarily relate to dollars.
Go ahead, Mr. Holman.
Another just quick, keeping up with, again, HR personnel rules and regulations is a bit of a challenge, of course. And then secondarily to that, there was a component, I think, that's very important that we're now missing. It used to be, and of course, you don't want to reminisce and take the walk back path, but in similar fashion to the budget when it comes to service level. We don't do as much growing our own. We don't spend much time in training and such. Do you envision HR's role in the area of training, program for emerging leaders, seeing Lean Six Sigma, anything to help our managers, our supervisors to become better at what they do, so they grow to people like yourself, Mr. Falsey, Mr. Wilbur, Mr. Abbott. I mean, me too, I'll have to share as a military brat coming and graduating from a local high school and staying here with my family. I'm the last family here, both my wife and I. This is what we need. We need people, younger folks, that are coming back rather than looking for never intention to come back.
In the event you were calling me a younger folk, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that's what you were saying, but thank you,
sure.
because I'm not no spring chicken. And I forgot to mention I did graduate from Bartlett High School by way of Chester Valley and Clark. It's important to have succession planning, and I am not, again, I don't know, apparently we don't have that, but it's important. It is important to try and grow your own, and so that people can promote from within. Otherwise, you end up with people who leave organizations and they have a lot of knowledge of the organization that goes with them. So, and when people do retire, it's good if they can have worked with people and pass that information, that knowledge down to the next level, so that they can promote. So succession planning is very important in any organization, and along lines of training, it's my understanding that the Employee Relations Department has implemented I think when I did my walkthrough, they called it a boot camp training for managers. Training is very important. How else do we expect people to get the information and the knowledge and the tools to do their job? So I do plan to look into what kind of training we can provide, if we have the ability to do that already in-house, or if we may need other resources. Like I said, I don't know yet, but very important to make sure that we have a trained workforce.
Mr. Bosky, anything, ma'am?
Oh, yes. Nice to meet you. I've heard very good things about you. As I'm looking at your resume, it dawned on me when I was looking at it previous that you do have a lot of experience in the HR realm. Can you articulate for me what experience you have with bargaining with labor union contracts and, basically in that realm?
I'll give you a broader outlook. I did a bit of a stint with the state of Alaska where they also have 9 bargaining units. So while the way the state was situated at the time, all of the departments were headquartered in June, but the Anchorage office had to do some of everything. So we did some of the prep work and those sorts of things, but we did not get to sit the first chair at those functions. But we did part of the research and things to help them with their bargaining and grievances and all those sorts of things. Here at the municipality, as the benefits director, I helped compile the data for the bargaining, was at the table for bargaining for the benefits sections of those agreements. And at Providence, where there are granted only 4 bargaining units, for one of my departments that decided to unionize, I was the lead for everything from participating in the voting for the members to join the union through negotiations of their initial contract. At Providence, there is an attorney who sits first chair, and the HR folks. I got to sit second chair and participate in that process. I'm very familiar with contracts, bargaining agreements. I've worked with many different union organizations.
Have you had discussions with the current administration as far as your role in bargaining the contracts when they come up for negotiations?
We have not specifically had those conversations, but I do understand that my department is responsible for a large part of that participation, along with legal participants. Perhaps payroll may sit at the table for those. I'm not sure. Can you talk about a little bit about your experience with workman's comp? I'm sure you must have had extensive. Doing this 20 plus years, but. Actually, workers' comp is a very specific area, and most of the, even public sector and with Providence, there's a specific area that handles workers' comp. So what my experience is with that is when a situation arises with an employee, first of all, if they file workers' comp, that's great, but sometimes the situation arises and employees are sometimes afraid to file workers' comp claims because they think it's a problem, they're going to get in trouble or something like that. So one of the things that's important is to vet that situation and find out if it is a workplace injury. They definitely need to file the workers' comp claims. They end up tying a lot potentially into ADA issues. Usually there's FMLA involved, so it's usually kind of a trifecta situation when there's workers' comp situation. So I have worked extensively with employees who have had all 3 of those going on at the same time. So it's usually not a one thing if it's workers' comp. It usually at least involves FMLA along with those situations.
Well, I've had the experience of doing a lot of HR myself, and so one thing I can tell you from a municipal standpoint, one of the issues. I don't envy you with the job you're about to take, and I mean this not at all disparaging any employees, but to me this is the one department in all of the municipality that has the biggest issues. Look, we're taking SAP off the table. We're not talking about IT right now, but but frankly, I've been around municipality not nearly as long as Assemblymember Gray Jackson, but through my time as the chair of the Budget Advisory Commission, and every single time, for 6-8 years now, I go into municipal departments before the budget, after the budget, just figure out the one thread everybody complains about is ER consistently. And it's interactions with ER, it's getting ER to process things, it's, the backlog, the log jam you talked about, you're spot on when you say that. So I agree with Mr. Peterson 100%. Morale is directly linked to productivity. But I want happy employees because they'll be productive employees, but I want accountable employees that produce. And I want to make sure that we're measuring. This is what we need to accomplish. Sometimes there's better ways to do those processes. But one issue that I know that we have, and it's a legal issue too, but it's definitely ER related because I have a number of people that I've spoke to that have had workers' comp claims, and some have ended up getting litigated, and the city's gone on the hook simply because some of the paperwork was screwed up, frankly. And that can't happen. So this, obviously, as we are having this discussion, I can see this as being a weakness, but it's a learning moment, and it's an opportunity for you to really become the master of this situation. Some of the things that we look at, and I'll be looking to you for advice, but when we're talking about AWWU, this is a ratepayer-based organization that has it within the rates they collect. They could have, we could take a lot off the table by just letting them have, be able to handle their own hiring and ER issues to some degree. Consolidation I'm a big fan of, but not when it's at the cost and it backs up every other municipal department, because that costs us more than it does one extra person over at AWU. You see? So those are the kinds of recommendations as the director that as an assembly member, I'll be looking to you, and maybe you'll say, no, we can handle it all in-house. It's just we have to change this, or maybe I need 1 or 2 extra people. But I look forward to having unfiltered discussions. Sometimes I'll propose something and you'll think I'm crazy. I want to hear that, And sometimes you'll say, that goes a little too far. Roll it back a little bit. But the goal, I think, for us is to make sure that we can get this department back on track, essentially making sure they have the resources they need to do their job effectively. Because we want to make sure every dollar we spend of taxpayers' money is spent well. And if we are not handling workman's comp claims or employee relation matters in a time-efficient manner, and then we're ending up having to pay thousands in grievances, that's a problem. It's a waste of money, frankly. So those are the types of things that, as an assembly member, I've seen and I've heard many times over. And you have a big job ahead of you. This is going to be a challenge in this department. And like I said, it's not a reflection necessarily on the people who are trying to do the job now. Maybe they're all spectacular superstars. Maybe there's a couple that need some help. And maybe there's 1 or 2 that need to go. But that's your job as a manager, is to evaluate those things and make sound judgments and recommendations. So I look forward to that conversation, and I'm glad to hear some of the comments that you made.
Well, if I can respond.
Please.
One of the problems that is probably perpetuating the morale problems and some of the other things is the lack of transparency in what happens in employee relations. Obviously, there are many things that are confidential that have to stay that way, but I believe in being able to share information that can be shared. There's no point in keeping things secret that would be helpful for people to understand. If, for example, there are reasons why there are delays in hiring for a certain position, maybe it's hard to find people, or if there's a reason, we should just share what that reason is instead of just saying, yeah, we know it's delayed. So one of the things I plan on doing early on is setting up individual meetings with each of the directors for the departments, going to their site, learn more about what they do, and find out what potential pain points they're having with employee relations departments so that we can work towards those individually. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all thing. I think, as you mentioned, AWWU, I think each department probably has their specific areas that we need to focus on. And so that's one of the things I plan on doing early on. But again, transparency, I think, is going to be very important as this department transitions, so that people just have a better idea of why. If there's a problem, it's okay if we say what happened or why that situation has occurred. I think that'll go a long way towards helping people understand when there are delays. But that hopefully that should be the exception and not the rule.
I like
I'm in agreement with you.
I like what I'm hearing. One of the notes that I made when you were talking before was, there needs to be an effort to improve the interaction and service to other departments. So it's exactly what you just said. You have to start talking to them. And it's not that necessarily the previous administration didn't, but I know this has been a challenge, not just for the last 3 years that I've seen it, but for at least the last 5 or 6 years that I've watched. And I'm very encouraged by your comments today.
I also just want to state that it's not just workers' comp. Leave management can be very complicated and convoluted, and there's many different facets and layers to that. So one of the other things that I plan on making sure it's focused on as soon as possible is making sure those are in order. It is a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of timelines. There's usually a lot of people who are using those leaves. So we really have to focus on that and make sure that we're treating people appropriately and meeting those timelines and getting back to people. If you're injured or you're hurt or you're sick, the last thing you want is delays from your employer and getting back to you. So that's one of the things that's very high on my list of deal with.
Mr. Evans, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Williams and I it looks like we've been kind of involved in the HR field for about the same amount of time, so there's probably nothing I can say that you already don't know. I will, this with respect to the morale issue, my collective wisdom over the years has been that every entity, especially an entity the size of the municipality, has good employees and has bad employees. The idea that, just because you're a municipal employee, you're automatically just, you got a halo around your head and you're just the greatest thing is misplaced. And that has an impact on morale because morale is not a monolithic problem, because bad employees tend to have morale issues when you try to make them do their job, and good employees tend to have morale issues when you kind of prevent them from doing their job. So I just hope that when you look through this issue of morale, you keep in mind that it's for some people, the fact that they have a morale problem and they are the problem, and you need to be able to identify that. And I have every confidence that you will be able to, based on all your past experience. And the only other thing I would add is, if there does come a time when you do tell Ms. Dombowski that she's crazy, I too want to be there.
I doubt that would happen, but if it did, it would definitely be behind closed doors and between the two of us.
Oh, I don't mind, actually. Anywhere.
I know I work in HR. I'm all about confidentiality.
Any other questions from any members? We look forward to confirming you on Tuesday. Thanks for joining us. Okay, Dennis.
Last but not least.
Thank you.
So what's changed in your life since the last time you were here?
Not too much. Left the city Friday afternoon, January 18th, and I started working with CH2M Hill Monday morning, January 21st. Got back from vacation on July 8th and started here July 9th, 7.5 years later. And thrilled to be back. I was very surprised, honored, privileged, and humbled when Mike called me probably 2 months ago now and talked about the discussion that he and the mayor had, Mayor-elect Berkowitz had, about me coming back into this role. And as I've been getting around, I've already visited about 12 shifts on fire stations. I tell the folks there that I almost split my cheeks when I was smiling so much at the opportunity.
Well, we're glad you're back. We've worked with you before, and we're glad to see you back here in this role.
I'm smarting a little bit about the compliment Mr. Dombowski paid Mr. Wilbur. But we'll work on that.
We ignore it. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Dennis. Okay, what is, can you describe one thing that you would change within the fire department right now?
Well, it's not necessarily change. We've used the word a lot today, transparency. Mine is going to be a very open and transparent form of management. I believe strongly in the hierarchical order of things, such that we have, probationary firefighters, engineers, captains, senior captains, battalion chiefs, assistant chiefs, deputy chiefs, chief,
who then reports to the city manager, who reports to the mayor, who reports to the assembly. So we all have a spot in the hierarchical order of management. And what I think has not happened is the people who are held accountable and responsible at certain levels have not been given the authority to make the decisions that are attendant to that level. And the fire department is unique in that it has right now 13 fire stations, 3 different shifts at each fire station, an A, B, and a C. So effectively, there are 39 different cultures within the fire department. That's not unlike the experience I had when I was a vice president in Alaska Pipeline, where we had 9 operating pump stations and 4 shifts per pump station. So we had 36 different cultures. And people have the tendency to work the path of least resistance, which may end up in a go-around or an end-around. And end-arounds work good in football. They suck in business. And so one of the things that I'm instructing as I'm visiting all of the fire stations is that we're going to follow the chain of command. Opportunities, threats can be voiced at any level, but if a firefighter comes to me with a concern, the first question I'm going to ask is, have you talked to your captain? And has that captain talked to the senior captain? So we're going to work through the hierarchical order of things to make sure that the structure is effective, expectations are well known, but most importantly, that the people who have the accountability also have the authority to make the decision.
Mr. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you support reinstating Fill the Boot in the same manner that it has been
Absolutely.
implemented? Oh, right.
The way it was before.
Thank you.
The way it was before. And when I was the city manager, I actually wrote, and I've been struggling to find it, but I wrote the press release that justified why active duty firefighters were appropriate to be used in Fill the Boot. First of all, Anchorage is a community unlike any other. And the Fill the Boot MDA fundraising effort was a symbol of pride for this community. And the fact that active duty firefighters were outside of the station in turnouts and fully ready to respond in really less time than it would have taken them to respond from the station, I've never understood the argument. We had at one point some family members on the medians, absolutely inappropriate. If family members are there, they belong in the parking lots away from the traffic. But I think Fill the Boot is an activity that Anchorage citizens should be proud of, and the fact that the fire department devotes the time to do that should be supported.
Thank you.
Well, we're done with
Mr. Chairman.
questions, aren't we?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've been a long-time supporter of MDA myself, even before I was had moved to Alaska. I appreciate your answer there. I've got a tougher question for you. I'm wondering if you have any ideas that we maybe haven't tried yet to try to handle the street people, the inebriates that unfortunately the EMTs and the ambulances end up picking up way too often.
Well, I know I had the privilege to be one of the co-chairs of the Administrative Transition Committee for then Mayor-elect Berkowitz. And then we had a couple of presentations that I had the opportunity to sit on his focus and initiatives to address that particular issue. It is a challenge to the fire department, absolutely. There are thousands of calls a year that we respond to needlessly. So to the extent that we can support the mayor in his initiatives to address that particular chronic problem, we will. I have the opportunity to have a car equipped with the lights and the sirens and the police and the fire radio. And I probably should have made a call in this morning as I was coming in on Ingram. And there was a gentleman who was obviously struggling to walk straight. But I was in a position on the traffic lane that I was in, I couldn't get to him easily. It's a real problem, and one that needs to be addressed. I wish I had the answer, but we'll support those who are smart enough to come up with an answer.
Thank you.
Mr. Bosky, ma'am.
You
And
might
in the
want-
meantime, we'll continue to make the calls. because they're
You might want me to
citizens.
go last.
Okay. Mr. Evans.
I don't have any questions for Mr.
Oh,
Mr. Hornman.
Just briefly, I know there's some discussion had been from some folks in my constituency. Very much, of course, impressed as I am with your experience and your skill level, previously serving as a municipal manager. I believe you actually worked at the fire department in the
2002.
Right. Some are concerned, of course, that you weren't, like we talked before, Joe from Withone, you're within and working way up, that you weren't an actual flying operating officer. Can you describe or explain, is there a requirement for the chief, the fire department's chief? I know that the police department, you have to have a certification by state law.
Yes, you do. No, there is no requirement. It has been tradition, and one of the first things that I talk to the employees about, the firefighters at all ranks, is how this is a change from tradition. But I also explain that fire department is a little bit of a misnomer. It's really the fire corporation. We have nearly 400 people working in all aspects of the department across 13 satellite offices. We also have responsibility for our city-owned, wholly owned subsidiaries, the Girdwood Fire Department and the Chugach Volunteers. We have a maintenance facility, we have a training facility, we have many specialized activities such as swift water rescue, high angle, etc. And we have $90 million a year, almost $90 million a year direct cost budget, and that excludes all of the capital expenditures for the equipment, mostly through general obligation bonds, and then the construction of the new fire stations. So in a sense, it's a corporation. And at the head of most corporations is a chief executive officer who's responsible for strategic planning, fiscal stability. We talked about succession planning earlier. Not necessarily the tactical, whether we go in with an ancient three-quarter hose in an attack mode or we approach it defensively. I'll get a deputy chief of operations, the chief operating officer, who has the tactical responsibility to manage deputy chiefs, assistant chiefs, battalion chiefs. They're responsible for the line operation. My job is to support, to ensure that working through the assembly and with the mayor's office and the city manager, the needs are identified, the needs are prioritized, and those things that absolutely have to happen are funded. And if we can't get funding, we explain to you so that you understand what that means. What's the consequences of not doing a dive team? What's the consequences of not having a swift water rescue response out of Station 11? And then ultimately, you're responsible, working with the mayor, to set the budget. But it'll be my responsibility to fully inform you of what it means to fund something, how will the results be measured, and what it gives back to the community. And on those items that we've asked for funding, but for whatever reason it's not available, you'll understand what the consequences are.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bosky, ma'am.
Well,
We have no other questions other than you, ma'am. So.
thank you, Chief LeBlanc. I don't want you to feel bad, so I will tell you I've been told by a number of people that were here at the city when you were city manager that you were one of the best they had ever seen.
Thank you.
See, but
Yeah.
I have to say Lance is still, what can I say?
All right.
Lance, you should leave now.
It gives you something to strive towards. So Chief, you addressed a lot of the issues, and one of the most controversial issues about your appointment, and I have to tell you, my phone has blown up from firemen that have called me that are very concerned that you really have limited to no fire experience. And the concern isn't, you talked about it from an administrative standpoint, and I have been on the record of saying I like giving the executive latitude to inform their executive team and do things a little differently, because I think out of creativity you get better results many times. So the discussion being, is essentially, they're putting an administrator in charge of this major public safety organization. And from that position, I think from a taxpayer's position, we can get creativity, we can get, good results doing that. But the key concern that I'm hearing many times over, I can't even tell you how many times I'm hearing, is who are your tactical advisors? Because there is a huge segment of the fire department that has significant confidence issues in some of your deputy chiefs. I will just say it right there, so you're aware of it, so you know it. And the concern that I heard as recent as last night was a fireman who called me who said, really, these are and he named 2 or 3 of the chiefs, and I'm off the record, I'll be happy to tell you who their concerns are, that those are your trusted advisors. So I want you to know, from chief's level, when you walk into a department, I doubt a lot of these guys are going to tell you to your face what they'll tell me behind the door. And I've always had that great relationship with every department where I just, I get information from employees and I'm able to protect the employees but relay the message. So that's a major concern. And the one thing I don't want to see is an administrator come in and start telling the guys on a fire line how they're going to operate and do it in a manner that maybe isn't as safe as somebody who knew the fire service and who's been there. So that's a major concern I have with your appointment. It's not to say I won't vote for the appointment. It's not to say that I don't think you're capable of administrating a department. I think you are capable. I think you demonstrated that as a city manager. So you have that. I think that's why it's a little easier, is because you've been in that role, city manager, where the fire department reported to you. So you know a lot of this already. So I think it'll just be an interesting thing. But I would like to hear a little bit about your concept when it comes to fire resources and resource allocation. In the past, there's been a lot of weight given to run volume and how resources are allocated. Do you have a general philosophy that you can share with me on how you might, when you're in a budget constraint time, how you might look at the resources and which resources might end up getting cut or shifted?
The short answer is yes. We're going to look at the resource allocation. For example, right now we're constructing 2 fire stations, 9 and 3. There's some question about the choice of the location. Well, that choice has been made. The distribution of various pieces of equipment around the city is hotly debated within the fire department. Which stations has a truck, which station has rescue, which stations have an MICU versus BLS. That's not beyond my purview. I mean, those are just allocation of assets. They happen to be fire assets. And I'm skilled and experienced at developing schedules, whether it's call volume, but probably more importantly, what is the call? I have an excellent working relationship with Dr. Levy, who's responsible for all of the medical within the department. I was a frequent attendee at the medical advisory board when I was city manager. I've already had a couple of meetings with Dr. Levy. We're going to look at, for example, cardiac care. And Chief Fuller-White mentioned this in his farewell speech during the change of command. One of the things that he's most proud of is our cardiac care save rate here in Anchorage is almost second to none throughout the United States. So clearly the type of call, the type of run that we're on is more important than the number of calls, because as we talked about earlier, a tremendous amount of our calls are man down, and we get there and neither the engine company nor the MICU, who's ever first in, can find the person, because by the time the call has been made, the fellow or the woman has struggled to their feet and walked off, and we don't find them. So it's the allocation of assets against the competing priorities, and for that I'm skilled at. One comment I will make, I'm a little bit surprised that you would say your phone has been going off the wall, because every single firefighter, engineer, captain, senior captain, and battalion chief that I've spoken to over the past 11 days has all expressed high optimism for my presence. And they said the attitude and the morale of the department changed overnight when my announcement was made. So if there are distractors out there, if there are people who are worried about me, I will sit down and I will prove to them.
And I think my comments were those that are calling me, not all, but I would say 90% of the calling me thought you were a good city manager, a great city manager. But the concern was, okay, he doesn't really have fire experience. Who's advising him? And the confidence being at that advisor level. And I think that's the message I'm trying to convey to you is you know, people will say something to your face because obviously you're the boss.
Sure.
But they might be reluctant to express their concerns because for fear of retaliation or whatever else. So I just want you to be aware, and I'm sure you've run corporations before. You've been in high management levels. You understand this, and so I think it's unfair for you to give that opportunity. And the other thing I would say when we're talking about allocation of resources. So one thing always it comes up whenever we're talking about budget crunches. What do they always want to chop? They want to chop truck 11 and tender 9, right? And so from a perspective of somebody who represents 50,000 people to the north, I think it's crucial for the fire chief to have an understanding of geographic area too, right? So it's not just about the type of call or the rig. It's about how long does it take the help to get there. And so when we have truck 11 in Eagle River, I mean, it's not just about the truck, it's about the guys on the truck and girls on the truck, right? How long does it take? And so if it takes another Anchorage rig to get 30 minutes just to downtown Eagle River, and then they have to go up Skyline Drive, that's a major issue. And so I think that should weigh very heavily when you're cutting. Or when we talk about tender 9 on South Side, it drives me crazy when I hear budget people say, well, it's just one guy in a truck, it's a water, it's just a truck. But you have to understand, that's a water truck, and there's no fire hydrants on the hillside.
Well, dealing with that problem again with the deja vu to me, when we came in with the Baker's administration, whether people believed it or not, we were facing a $33 million budget deficit in 2003. And we put together a very thoughtful plan of how the fire department was going to help overcome that budget deficit. And all of those arguments, just the ones you've said, I've lived through.
Yeah. Well, and
appreciate the Eagle River situation.
Sure. And and like I said, it takes. I'm not a fireman. I happen to know a little bit about fire department just because I'm married to one. But so being around it for 15 years or whatnot and going on ride-alongs and understanding, when you're doing a shuttle service for water on the hillside and you take out one of the water trucks, fundamentally, you can't put out a fire if your hose goes limp, right? You need water to put on the fire. So you have to make educated decisions, and I don't care what part of town you're in. If you're starting to make it where it's detrimental to the service, I say you haven't done your homework. You have to go a little further and understand each is unique, and it is because of the location. So speaking on South Anchorage, one of the issues that we've had over the years, it used to be the troopers, or what we used to have a backcountry rescue team that would go up on flat top that would respond. Through transitions of different administrations, as I got cut, there have been times where Anchorage is not supposed to respond, period, to backcountry. Now, I argue the people that live in South Anchorage, even if they're Anchorage taxpayers, Anchorage residents that park in that parking lot, and they might walk 10 minutes up the road, and now the fire department's down in the parking lot, but they're being directed not to respond. I think that's a major issue.
That's a real issue.
So what are your thoughts on backcountry rescue, and how will you direct your battalion chiefs and your crews to respond to those crucial emergency situations right there on flat top?
A little bit too early for me to give you a complete answer. I'm aware of the problem. I remember responding to a call where a skier was killed in an avalanche on the side of Flat Top. I actually did a television interview from the parking lot. I was shocked as I was driving up to the location, it was about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, to hear who wasn't responding to this particular case. There is a saying within the fire department, I'm sure you know this, you risk a little to save a little, you risk a lot to save a lot. There are rules and regulations, and they're there for purposes to protect people. So there are certain things that the fire department shouldn't be doing because we put ourselves at greater risk than what we're trying to save. If we have somebody in distress, and if we can help, we will help. And then I'll answer to the backcountry front country debate after the scene is safe.
Well, and I
The person
think,
is secured, but that's an issue we're gonna have to work through. I don't have the answer right now.
I appreciate that. We run into the same thing out at Eagle River Valley, out at the Nature Center. And I know personally people who have been on crews that have responded, and the captain on the scene or the battalion chief has just said, you know what, we know we're breaking the rules, but we're doing it anyways.
We
Because-
have people who live in the municipality of Anchorage that don't know that they're outside of the fire service.
That's true.
We're
What
gonna
is-
work through that.
Okay, I appreciate your comments on that. Mr. Chair, I'll hurry up because I know we're running short, but two other comments. What is your thoughts on, and what is the status of Medic 2?
I'm not prepared to answer that. I know there are issues with the Medic 1, Medic 2, Engine 1, Engine 2. I'd have to go back and ask Deputy Chief Ignola to explain that more in depth. I've just been introduced to the subject. I don't know.
That's fair. So one of the things, just to give you a little background, not only has this body, this assembly, boosted the response for the community service patrol van service, we had actually increased that, which talking to different emergency crews, whether it's police or fire, they've said it's made a dramatic difference, you know, as far as we're not using fire trucks to sit for an hour on man-down calls anymore, are greatly diminished. But one of the things this body also did is we put forward and funded, and actually the paramedics are on the street today because we recognize one of the issues with medic rigs is the fact that Medic 2 is out of service. Medic 2, the reason it was being out of service was they didn't have enough paramedics essentially in town. And we were actually talking, the last administration was talking about pulling ambulances from other parts of town to service the downtown area. And I would argue, you know, you have people on the hillside or in West Anchorage that pay a lot of property taxes too, and to have them without ambulance service right in their area is a problem. So this body went ahead and funded that additional academy of strictly paramedics. They're on the streets today, but I have not gotten a status report as far as when Medic 2 will be reopening.
Okay.
And that was part of the discussion. Now, I think there's probably a little bit more work to do as far as staffing in order to fully staff that medic rig, my guess. Because paramedics, they tend to have higher burnout rates, they have other issues. The other thing I would tell you with paramedics specifically, we used to have a program in which we trained more of our EMT3s in-house to become paramedics, and it seemed like that was pretty successful. But I would ask you to go back to those paramedics. I think there's 7 or 8 of them on the fire department right now that are licensed, that have voluntarily basically stopped being paramedics and lost 20+% of their pay just because of political issues within the department, forced overtime, all those different things. So if there's ways we can incentivize or bring back some of those experienced paramedics to kind of fill the gaps, you know, I think in-house, whether it's some sort of, I think it's probably going to have to be a combination of two. You know, older paramedics that want to, bring their cert back, or newer guys that are coming up that we can train in-house. I think that would be successful. But the last thing that we have to talk about, because I represent the area, is it's my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as you were the city manager under Mayor Begich, there was an effort for AFD to take over the Chugach Volunteer Fire Department. Okay.
Never.
So I love your response. I want to hear your comments on that rumor that's out there. People are afraid of you being fire chief, specifically saying, how will you work with Chugach
So
Volunteer?
come to my office right now, and I'll put my button up on the wall that says, "We love our Chugach Volunteer Fire Department."
Okay.
I kept it for 7.5 years, hoping I might be able to show it again. But we never, ever thought about taking over the Chugach Volunteer Fire Department. I can say that unequivocally, and
I will be happy to pass on that message,
Yep.
because I know, and I assume you've already done it or you're in the process of doing it, but I'm sure you'll cultivate a good relationship with that department.
I was the first city manager that ever went out to their monthly meetings.
Perfect. I love hearing that. I appreciate it. I'm sorry for the grilling.
No.
We'll have a lot more conversations. As many know, public safety is something I'm very passionate about. I think it's our primary responsibility, and so anything that I can do to assist, I just want the honest, assessment. whether I'm right on an issue or wrong on an issue, I usually come to the fire department or police department, whatever department, and say, this is our issue, how can we solve it? So I'll look to you and, and the experience of the many there to find those solutions that are both affordable and give us the best return on investment. Thank you.
Ms. Gray
Thank
Jackson.
you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be really, really quick. First, I want to thank Ms. Dombrowski for bringing up the fact that there are concerns in terms of you being the fire chief and not having the fire experience, if you will, okay? Because that was one of my concerns when I first heard that you were going to be the fire chief. But I got to tell you, I talked to a lot of fire folks, too, in the rank and file, not just union folks, a lot of them, okay, all over the place. And they were, the ones I talked to were ecstatic. They really were. And I look forward to you being the chief executive officer for the fire department, because I know that when you were the municipal manager and had the fire department under you, you were fully engaged out there. Okay, I remember that clearly. And one more comment. I'm sure that several of us would have attended the change of command, myself included, except we didn't know, we weren't invited. So I just wanted to make that comment. But it's okay, things happen.
The fire department does not have a public information officer.
Okay.
Forrester acts as our PIO.
Right, right. But anyway, congratulations.
Should hire Mr. Honeman to come over to be our PIO.
Here you go.
As he was with the police department.
Mr. Evans, sir, any questions? Mr. Holman, any questions? Mr. Peterson?
No, thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Do we as a body make a recommendation to the remaining of my
No.
colleagues? We just
No.
take information.
So, we look forward to confirming you on Tuesday. Thank you for being back with us,
Thank you,
Dennis.
Chief.
That
That was a great
is our
meeting.
last
All of it.
interview, so this meeting's adjourned.